Hey, everybody. I'm Dr. Jared Skowron, and really excited to be giving this webinar with Joe and Lois from MandiMart. We're going to be talking about how to help your child's behavior. Let me give a brief introduction for myself. I'm the founder of Spectrum Awakening, and Spectrum Awakening is my organization that helps kids with autism. As a brief introduction for myself, I've been an international autism biomedical doctor. This is my 21st year in clinical practice. I've been voted the best holistic pediatrician in my home state of Connecticut here in the US for 6 years in a row. And while I've been a physician for 21 years, 10 years ago, I was looking for ways to help my patients because I use natural therapies instead of pharmaceuticals. And I couldn't find something out there that I thought was high quality for my kids and things that would work, things that'd be gluten-free and dairy-free and palatable. So I created my own. So I launched Spectrum Awakening, and currently we're a company that hosts my clinic and my telemedicine consults, as well as producing 75 or more different high quality supplements for our kids. And we also have lab testing, all the biomedical lab testing you may want for your kids and education. So I'm really trying to help as many families with kids on the spectrum as possible. So when I talk to my families in my telemedicine clinic, and I say, hey, what are your goals? What do we want to do? Okay. It really comes down to three requests. Okay. Number one, people want more language out of their kids, whether their kids are nonverbal or pre-verbal, or they have a few words that they want water or a cookie or whatever, or no is always one of the first words. Getting that language. Another thing is behaviors. Okay. There's a lot of behaviors that our kids have that don't work with us, whether they're screaming, whether they're hyperactive and using your couch as a jungle gym, whether they're hurting themselves. They have self-injurious behaviors or they're hurting you. You know, how many of us have had our hair pulled out? We have scratches on our arms where, you know, our kids are hurting themselves or us. And the third thing that people want is independent living. Okay. That's a huge goal for so many of our families, because obviously one day we're not going to be here. We want to make sure our kids are taken care of. So what we're going to talk about today is the behavior part. Um, okay. So we're going to talk about the behavior part. That's a little video, but I'm going to show that video a little later. Actually, let me go back to that video. This is a video. I'm just going to show the before. Later, I'll show the after. This is a video of a boy named Scout. Now, Scout is not a patient of mine, but his mother found Spectrum Awakening and tried one of our supplements. And she was wonderful enough to record a before and after video of her son on our most popular supplement. So I'm going to show the before now, and then later on, we'll show the after. All right, so great little video. We've got a pre-verbal kid. He's obviously trying to vocalize, but we don't understand the words that he's trying to get out. So we'll get to the after in a little bit. So when you think about autism, okay, understand that autism is a medical condition. Okay, this is not a behavior choice from the child. This is not bad parenting. There are medical things going on in our kids, and it's those medical changes that create the developmental delays, create the delay in language, create the behaviors, create all the different things that we see. So addressing autism medically is the best way to help our kids improve. Now, obviously, we want to go to therapy. You want to do speech or occupational therapy or behavioral therapy. Those are great ways to train your child. But until you've fixed what's going on inside, you don't get the complete change that you could. All right. So when we talk about behaviors, there's a lot of different behaviors. You know, I mentioned a few: hyperactivity or violence. So, what is that behavior that your child has? Is it uncontrolled, inappropriate laughter, where our kids will just laugh at no apparent thing at some strange time? Is it toe walking with our kids? And trust me, toe walking is not because their calves are too tight. Are they constantly screaming? Are they hitting themselves or others, as I mentioned? Or do they just have temper tantrums where, hey, you know what? everything is good until you say no, until you pull that tablet away, until you tell them we're going to get in the car. Everything's fine until that moment. Or we're dealing with different stims, whether it's motor stims or hand flapping or vocal stims or different stereotypies. What behavior are you guys looking to help with? All right. And again, going back to autism being a medical issue, autism is very complicated when we look at things medically. So I had this little flower drawing drawn up that show the different medical aspects of autism. Now, some of our kids may only be dealing with one or two of these. Some may be dealing with all of them. So there's things, and going around and reading the flower here is there's autoimmunity. A lot of our kids have autoimmune encephalitis. That's inflammation of the brain. The body attacks itself, whether that's pandas or pans or not. That's a big issue for a lot of our kids. There's imbalance in brain chemistry, things like serotonin that make us happy and adrenaline that make us angry. That's an issue for a lot of kids. Detoxification for others. Genetics for about a third of our kids. A third of our kids are born with DNA that just the brain, the DNA of the brain isn't what it should be. And that's causing the delays. Obviously, a lot of us focus on gut health and digestion and diet and gut infections, which we're going to get into today, hormonal issues. And again, when I say hormones, you may be thinking like sex hormones, testosterone, estrogen, and that's in puberty, but it's now. Okay, there's hormones now with young kids and older kids that are part of what's going on. And then, of course, lastly, mitochondria. Mitochondria are those parts of every cell that create energy and not functioning in a lot of our kids on the spectrum. Okay. So let me go back to that, what behavior we're dealing with. And I want to associate different medical causes with the different behaviors. So those people who have inappropriate, uncontrolled laughter, it's often a gut infection. So many of our kids, and let me take a step back. The immune system in autism is altered. It's off. Okay. You can have this over hyper functioning immune system where there's autoimmune attacks on the brain. You can also have this under-functioning immune system. And this under-functioning immune system seems to hit our gut the most because we have different immune systems for different parts of the body. So fighting colds and flus is a different part of the immune system than the gut's immune system. So a lot of our kids are predisposed to gut infections, whether that be candida or another yeast, a fungus, mold, parasites, bacteria, viruses. Trust me, I've seen so much come out of our kids' rear ends. And that uncontrolled laughter is a really specific symptom for gut infections. Kids who toe walk. Look, I feel most kids who toe walk is because they're constipated. And trust me, if I have to go to the bathroom and there's not one and I have to run to one, I'm probably going to run on my toes until I get there. So when you see those kids toe walk, they don't need to stretch their calves. They don't need to go get surgery and cut their Achilles tendon. They're constipated, and we just got to get that stuff out. Kids who are screaming, okay? Kids who are screaming are in pain, period. All right. So when you see a child and you go to a doctor, you go to the hospital, you go to the emergency room, and they say, oh, that's just autistic behavior. Please, if you ever hear that phrase, just turn away. Don't listen to that person. People scream because they're in pain, period. Okay. What we need to do is find the location of the pain. A lot of our kids may be teething. They may have growing pains. They may have a gut infection. And think of our kids that have such hypersensory issues where things like cutting their hair or cutting their nails is incredibly uncomfortable for them. Imagine having an infection in your gut. Imagine having a bacterial infection or a parasite or whatever. It's going to hurt more for them. And then if they don't know what to do with that pain and the pain's strong enough, that's where they're going to hurt themselves or others, because sometimes the pain I make feels better than the pain that I can't control. So they may hurt themselves or bang their head. I mean, all our kids who are headbangers, they're trying to numb the pain elsewhere in their body. All right. Temper tantrums, where everything's good until you snap and you tell them no, that often has to do with abnormalities in hormones, especially our stress hormone cortisol. Okay. Last but not least, our kids who stim a lot, especially motor stims, whether that be hand flapping or vocal stims or other stereotypies, has to do with imbalances of brain chemistry. Okay. So where I started in my practice is different natural therapies that'll alter and improve your levels of serotonin and dopamine and adrenaline that are controlling these behaviors. All right. Again, as I mentioned, if you hear anybody, any doctor, anyone say, oh, that's screaming, that behavior, it's just the autism, please ignore them. Walk away, say something to them if you'd like, but that phrase doesn't help your child. That phrase helps the doctor not have to deal with a screaming person. Okay. I've had multiple kids go to the emergency room screaming in pain. They just get sent away. They say, you have autism, autism kids scream, just walk away. When in reality, they were later diagnosed with massive gut disease. Some had Crohn's, some had ulcerative colitis. There were serious medical issues, and our kids get ignored. Okay, our kids get ignored because any kind of behavior that our child has, if that was in a person who had language, they'd be treated totally differently. Okay, so if you went to the emergency room and you were screaming, the doctor would perform tests. They'd try to identify the source of your pain. They'd try to figure out how to help you. Our kids get dismissed. Okay, or even worse, they just get put on a pharmaceutical straitjacket. All right. How many of our kids have said, oh, you're screaming or you're not behaving in school? Here's your ADD med of Ritalin or methylphenidate or Adderall. Here's your clonidine. Here's your antidepressant, Zoloft, Prozac. Here's your antipsychotics like Risperidol or Abilify. They're just given these meds because the other doctors don't know what else to do. Okay. But we do. We understand what's going on with our kids. We understand how to help them better and more permanently than just putting them on a psych med that it'll work the day you take it and not work if you stop it. Okay. And that's if you're lucky. So let's get into how we can really help. And I would say, excuse me, the number one thing that I want every family to make sure that they're addressing with their kids is make sure they're pooping. Okay. When you've got a baby, taking care of a baby seems like a daunting thing, but there's just a few major things. Okay. Are they eating? Are they peeing and pooping? And are they sleeping? We've got to get down to the basics of what keeps us alive. And so many of our kids are constipated. So many of our kids have problems pooping that if you needed to start anywhere, if your kid had a behavior issue, make sure we're pooping on a regular basis. Okay. And when I say that, I want to make sure that the poop is healthy. So what's a healthy poop? Okay. It's a full release. All right. You got to get rid of all your poop, not just a little pile, not just some constipated rabbit pellets, but the whole thing. And I remember my daughter's 12 now, but when my daughter was 3 or 4 and she would poop in the toilet, I would say, where did you put that thing? I mean, that thing is huge and sticking out of the water. Okay. Poops should be big. They should be full releases. Okay. What happens with kids who are really constipated, this is called impacted poop or impacted stool, is that your poop will sit there in the colon, in your large intestine, and it can't move. It can't get out. So the body tries to flush it out with water. So you get these little small piles of mush, and it looks like they're pooping every day. They might even be pooping multiple times a day, but everything's not getting out. So constipation is a huge problem for our kids. Another thing to think about is our kids who pee a lot, our kids who wet the bed a lot, they often are constipated because our colon and our bladder are right next to each other inside the body. So if you got this big impacted poop, it's going to push on your bladder and the bladder is going to get small, so you can't hold much. So you're peeing a lot, you're wetting the bed a lot, and just making sure your kid poops every day is just a huge basic start. Now, how do you get your kids to poop? Number one, the best thing in my opinion is magnesium combined with electrolytes. Okay. Currently, the most popular thing conventionally is to prescribe Miralax. I know in Europe there's a different name for Miralax, but it's the same active ingredient. It's propylethylene glycol. I don't like it. I don't like it because there are psychiatric side effects. When they did the initial safety studies on propylethylene glycol, 6% of people had anxiety and depression. So there's a lot better things we can use. What has been used for hundreds of years before this came out was magnesium. Okay. Magnesium's been used forever to help with constipation. Okay. So go with magnesium. And again, when you lose a lot of fluid and a lot of water in your poop, you're going to drain your electrolytes. So it's always good to add electrolytes to that. So I've put this all together. And one of our more popular supplements is called Brown Log Train. And yes, I do get our patients and our families to name our products, so they come up with some amazing names. So Brown Log Train is this magnesium electrolyte combo. Our patients love it. They swear by it, but use something to get them pooping on a regular basis. Okay. All right. This was actually something somebody posted. One of our families, my 6-year-old autistic boy, struggled for years with constipation. One dose of brown log train had him in the dump station for an hour and a half later, not for an hour and a half, but an hour and a half after taking it. No struggle, nothing messy or obnoxious, just a normal poop. He doesn't need it frequently anymore, but it will be a constant spectrum awakening supplement on our shelf. That's Jeannie. I know Jeannie well. Thank you, Jeannie. All right. So let's move from the constipation. We talked about behaviors associated with gut infections. And again, understand that our kids have an altered immune system. It's either overfunctioning, causing an autoimmune attack on the brain, or it's underfunctioning. And when that immune system underfunctions, especially in the gut, you're going to be predisposed to gut infections, bacteria, fungus, candida, mold, all that fungal category, parasites, viruses, you name it. So in my practice, in our telemedicine practice, we will test all our kids for these infections. So here on the right is a stool analysis that we got back from a kid, and they had a bacterial infection called Campylobacter. Okay. These are things that we see every day with our patients. We want to make sure we're identifying gut infections because A, they're causing pain. And that pain is going to feel more to our kids with sensory issues. And it's going to create the behaviors when you're in pain. And frankly, if you're in pain and having behaviors, you're not paying attention. Okay. So we send our kids to therapy, we send them to school. We want to make sure that works. So getting rid of these gut infections is not just going to help their behaviors, but it's going to help them feel better, feel calmer, feel happier. And then when you do go to school and therapies, things are going to get in better into their brain because they're paying attention. Okay. Here's another patient of mine. You can see on the right, they were tested for parasites. This kid had 2 parasites, one called blastocystis and one called giardia. So 2 simultaneous parasites. You've got to get rid of this stuff. Now, when we get rid of these infections, okay, it's a 3-step process. You may go to your doctor and they may prescribe certain medications like anti-parasite medications, like metronidazole, antifungal medications like ketoconazole or nystatin, or different antibiotics. That's great. And you may see them help and then the infection returns, or you may see them not help. And the reason that these infections are tough to get rid of is because they're alive and they protect themselves. And they protect themselves, they create this layer of slime. This layer of slime is called a biofilm, okay? So it's their way to defend themselves against the host. So those medications can't access them. So you have to dissolve this biofilm. So if you've done these kind of treatments before, you've done them for months, no results, or you do them and then the infection comes back, it's probably because you didn't get rid of the infection completely, and we've got to get rid of this slime layer, all right? Now, another caveat is that when you kill these bugs off, it hurts. Okay. It hurts when you kill them off, and behaviors can get worse when you start certain gut treatments, unless you do something to prevent that, which we'll get to. So if you've ever done gut treatments like probiotics or inulin or other different type of gut supplements, and it made behaviors worse, it's because they were working, but they were causing pain. And so you've got to remove these dying infections, and that's going to make the process go a whole lot easier. So what I do with my patients is this 3-step process. Okay. Step 1, again, we've got to we've got to remove the dying infections. And we do that with different supplements called binders. Okay. There's a lot of different binders out there. Things like fiber, things like activated charcoal, chlorella, bentonite clay, all great binders. We've got one that we've combined, I think, like 15 different binders into something called our gut binder sweet tasting. It's nice because if you have to open the pills and swallow the powder, it's pretty tolerable, which is nice. If you get behaviors when you're treating gut issues, give more binders. Okay. You cannot give too many binders. Help that stuff escort out. And that's why we have to start with making sure these kids are pooping. Because if you kill these bugs off and they just sit there, they're just going to sit there and be in pain. Okay. So you've got to get rid of this stuff when there's behaviors with gut treatments, binders. I can't hammer that home enough. Number 2, that slime layer defensive wall biofilm, you've got to get rid of it. Certain enzymes, Certain digestive enzymes work really well to dissolve that. I mean, think about what a digestive enzyme is. It's something that breaks down a substance. Okay. If you've ever, taken digestive enzymes with your food, it helps your food break down. But what I want you to do, if you ever want to try it, take some food, open up a digestive enzyme capsule, sprinkle it on your food, and just let it sit there. You'll see it dissolve. I mean, not instantly, it's not like a movie, but this is what enzymes do. Enzymes are designed to break down things. And then lastly, you want to kill the infection. Okay, there's a lot of great natural things you can use. I love colloidal silver because it's tasteless. We also offer grapefruit seed extract. There's a lot of natural herbal things that'll act as antimicrobials and kill these bugs off. You can use those pharmaceuticals as well with this type of treatment and protocol. Okay, so if you're using binders and you're using enzymes for the biofilm and you're using grapefruit seed extract or colloidal silver, you can use the pharmaceuticals with them. These infections are so hard to get rid of. Why not just throw everything that you can at it? Okay, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure our kids are as healthy as possible, as fast as possible. All right. I love scientific research. Again, my practice is all natural therapies, but diagnostics are scientific and treatments are scientific. And there's tens of thousands of research studies on autism and natural therapeutics. So if any of you have ever kind of watched my podcast or our Facebook or our YouTube or anything that I try to get education out every week, we always focus on science because there's so much research out there that shows these things work. So just as an example, here's a research study showing that grapefruit seed extract inhibits the biofilm of Candida yeast, as well as colloidal silver. Now, colloidal silver in research is called silver nanoparticles, but these silver nanoparticles, these colloidal silver, destroy Candida and the biofilm. So there's scientific research behind this stuff. Okay, it doesn't just work. There's research. There's a lot of science and research behind it all. All right. So moving off of that, let me just kind of brief little summary. When your kids have behaviors, when they're screaming, when they're hurting you, when they're hyper, they're in pain. Okay? You've got to focus on the pain. And a lot of that pain comes from gut infections. So number one, make sure they're pooping. Try the brown log train. Number two, go after a gut infection. Try that 3-step protocol. But what if there's no gut infection? Not all kids have gut infections. It might be something else. Maybe you've treated gut infections and they're gone, but there's still behaviors. So a few other things to think about. If your kids have seasonal behaviors, spring and fall, look at environmental allergies, because when we have an allergic reaction, we have histamine flowing through our body. Histamine is a brain stimulant, keeps us awake. Okay. So you may want to use different antihistamines, natural or pharmaceutical, during those times to help the behaviors. If it's seemingly random, so many of us forget teething. If our kids can't point and say, oh, it hurts in my mouth, we may forget. Okay. And teeth come all ages. You've got your initial teeth, and it's 6 to 12 months. You've got 6-year molars. My daughter's 12 and pushing one of her incisors now. At so many different ages, we could be pushing a tooth. Think about that pain. Also, what if they're just behavioral after they eat certain foods? Either you have a food allergy, maybe you have a food sensitivity, maybe you have acid reflux. Those behaviors can come after eating. Keep a food diary and a food journal, see if you can make those associations. And another one that I want to focus on is you may have heard something called PANDAS or something called PANS. This is a medical condition that's an autoimmune attack on the brain. And one of the symptoms that is specific to PANDAS and PANS is your behaviors are horrifically worse after a cold. So if your kid gets sick, there's, hey, it's the beginning of school season, they're going to get sick. If the behaviors are horrifically worse after that, then you most likely have this PANDAS or PANS autoimmune condition. We can address it. We can treat it naturally. But take a look at how is my child's behavior during and after a cold. It's a huge kind of thing to look at. Kids who do better with a cold, they've got gut infections. Okay. So I talked to a patient last week, said, hey, my kid had a cold and they started talking. And then the cold resolved and they didn't talk anymore. Why is that? Well, the immune system ramped up. It was killing infections that were affecting language. So that's our treatment. Whoops. That's our treatment condition we're going to go after. Other triggers can also be brain chemistry, which again, I get into a lot of. That's where I started my practice. If you've got high adrenaline levels, you have high dopamine levels, you have low serotonin levels, it's going to affect your general mood. All right. So again, autism is medical. All right. The delays in language, the behaviors, the sensory, the motor, the sleep issues. It just doesn't happen because it happens. There are real medical reasons behind it. And I would highly encourage you to work with an autism doctor to get to the bottom of it. Because frankly, our pediatricians weren't trained. Our pediatricians don't understand the medical aspects of autism. They weren't taught it. It's not their fault. It's not their job. Just like if you went to your pediatrician and said, oh, my child has cancer, they're going to refer you to an oncologist. Okay. Work with an autism doctor to get to the bottom of all of these things. So, again, what do you want from your child? Language, better behaviors, independent living. Let me go back to our video. So we're going to show the before and after again. You saw the before. This is Scout, pre-verbal, a lot of vocalizations. Again, this is not a patient of mine, but this was a mom who bought our #1 supplement, which is called Power and Focus. Got our Power and Focus supplement from our website, gave it to their child. You're going to see the after 1 week of this supplement. Okay.
Upstairs. They go upstairs. Okay, why? Mommy, go upstairs. On or off? On. Mommy, on. Good job. Baby shark.
A baby shark. So I love this video because it shows anything's possible. Anything's possible. You may have been doing speech therapy for months or years and not gotten anywhere. But until you give the brain the nutrition it needs, that's when it's going to optimally function. Okay. Just wrapping up, a little testimony here from Michelle. Dr. Skowron's been so helpful. Spectrum Awakening products have made an extreme difference in our lives. Have all the tests, info, research, and products to get you back on track. And of course, we're going to be recording this and showing it to you. And for those of you mothers out there, sharing incredibly important information to your husbands. You may have to do it a couple times because we have fixed goals. We say, okay, I got it. But just in case, can you just repeat that whole thing? I wasn't listening. All right. And again, just to kind of sum up everything that I do with Spectrum Awakening, come to our website. We have education, we have free ebooks, we have our podcast called Autism Awakening. You can see in podcast world. Our Facebook page has a lot of info. We have Instagram, YouTube. We have lab testing. We have supplements on our website, telemedicine appointments, and I love working with Joe and Lois and Mandy from MandiMart. They have been amazing, and they are our exclusive distributors of our Spectrum Awakening products throughout Europe. And we only work with them because they're great people. They're great people, and this is what they do. They help families who have kids with autism, and that's what I'm trying to do, and that's what I want to do, and that's why I work with them. And again, Joe and Lois and Mandy, it's been, I don't know how many years we've been doing this, but it's been great. It's been great because we're able to reach out to a whole nother continent and give them help for their kids. So that's why we work with you guys. We only work with you guys, and because you're great and you care. So I'm going to turn it over to Joe from MandiMart. Joe, you're muted.
Cool, there we go. So, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Jared, for the presentation and the very kind words you've got for us. So, what I'm going to talk about is, who is MandiMart? A lot of you will have received our emails, been on our list, and probably be customers of MandiMart already. Some of you might know Mandy personally, going back many years now. Some of you might not know that much about us. So I'm just going to cover a little bit about who we are and where we came from. So MandiMart was founded by my mum, Mandy Rodwell. 100% family owned and operated business since the start. And we the way mum started it was the slogan was parent to parent spectrum supplies. You can see Sam in the pictures there. Sam, could you go to the next slide actually, Jared? So you see Sam here when he was younger. He was born in 1997 and diagnosed with 47 XYY, severe aggressive autism, and heavy metal toxicity when he was 2 years old. And as Jared said, in the UK, you go to the NHS, you go to the GP, and even today, especially 20 years ago, not a lot of help. Nothing really, nothing. Just left to your own devices to see what you can do. And for a lot of people, that's not acceptable. So what are we going to do about it? You have to figure it out for yourself. So you go online, you read journals, you find communities, you find other people in the same situation as you. What are they doing? What's working? And this is what my mum did. And it led her to become aware of lots of autism doctors, alternative doctors in the US, because that's really where everything happens, even today. The doctors in the US and the climate they have in the US towards treating autism is very different to a lot of places in the world today. So back then, 25 years ago, there was one, maybe two companies that were importing the supplements from the US, distributing them here, and the price gouging was absolutely out of this world. I mean, even 20 years ago, it could be £70 you were looking at for CP1, which even today, with 20 plus years of inflation, we're selling for less than £60. So that's just kind of a clue as to what the situation was back then. Could you go to the next one, Jared? So this is kind of where MandiMart loosely started to form itself. It was cheaper for my mum to go directly to the US, buy the products there, pay for shipping from the US, pay import charges, import taxes, administration charges, and deal with that whole process. It was cheaper to do that if you were ordering more than 1 or 2 units. So that's what she did for the communities that she was part of online. Instead of everybody paying £70, let's go to the US and then get it here. She'll ship it out to people around the UK, and everybody's saving quite a significant sum of money, because buying supplements, doing testing, caring for an autistic child is expensive stuff. I'm sure all of you know that. It's very expensive to try and help your kid. So that she was just doing that to help people that she knew, and people would share that information with others, and more people started to make use of this kind of system that mum was putting in place. And it grew and grew. Different products that everybody wanted to use or try, people she'd never heard of, were starting to get involved. And she never made any money out of doing this. This is what it costs. Split that up by the number of people, the number of units that she's brought over, and they would send her the money, and that was it. And it went on like this for quite a few years, actually. Would you go to the next slide, Jared? And so eventually, because it had started to become quite a significant amount of work to be doing in the evenings and on the weekends, Mum decided to take the plunge and set up a website and called it MandiMart, after all of her friends would jokingly call her that. And that was kind of the start of MandiMart officially, nearly 20 years ago now. And there was me and my older brother Tom. We were 10, 11. We were bubble wrapping the CP1 on the kitchen table. That's where we'd get our pocket money from. That would be like our chores. So we were all involved, really. And shortly after this, Mum got involved with treating autism, who these days they're called Thinking Autism, but it's a continuation of the same charity, the largest charity in the UK for autism. And in 2006, they decided to elect her as the chairwoman. And she really enjoyed the role. Um, there was a whole band of trustees, and they were really doing a lot and making a lot of difference. And in 2007, Mum organised a 2-day international conference in Bournemouth, where we're from, and brought over to the UK all of these doctors whose work she'd been, looking at for many years to share that with other parents in the UK who were at different stages. They might have just had their kid diagnosed and were in that same state that she was a few years before. What do I do? Where do I turn? So let's bring the doctors here, let you have a face to face, ask questions. And yeah, it was a big success. 350 delegates came, complete sellout of the event, and it was very successful, very successful. Really, really exciting stuff, actually. And then the year after that, she was invited over to the USA to present on the parent panel at the DAN conference, which is Defeat Autism Now. And she went over there, presented the case study. Yeah, and this picture here is I can't remember exactly which conference this is. I think this is a different one where she was set up in the UK as an exhibitioner. You can see the drawers just behind the desk there. Those are literally taken out of the garage. That's what we had in the garage. So when we were packing parcels and stuff, we would go out to the garage, pull it out of the drawers, pack it up into an envelope and ship it. We just picked up the drawers directly out of the garage and took them with us to the conference. That was how we did it. Could you go to the next slide, Jared? So that was the start of MandiMart, and then as you can see, this is the cabin here that she had built in 2014, because we'd completely overgrown the garage. It was, you could hardly move in there. Floor to ceiling was taken up with these drawers. There wasn't enough room to do anything. We couldn't get any more products in, so we had to find a new space. So that's what we did. We gave up a big chunk of the back garden, had this cabin built, and that probably doubled the space that we had. So we moved in there 2014. Very nice, very spacious. Quite quickly that filled up as we brought more products over, got busier and busier through word of mouth, and it became far too much for Mum to do by herself. And that was when Lois first got involved, shortly after that, in 2015. She was, I think it was 25 or 30 hours a week you were doing, I can't remember now, something like that. And that was just packing parcels, dealing with deliveries. So it got quite busy, really. For just a little one-person operation, she needed that help. And Lois came in to do that, which was really nice. Could you go to the next slide, Jared? And then this is when I actually became much more involved with the business. Lois left to go off to college, and Mum needed help. And we couldn't really find anybody to do that. I was off at Brunel University, not enjoying myself very much. Not enjoying the environment, not enjoying my course, or not feeling I was getting much out of it. So I dropped out of university and filled that void that had been left once Lois had gone to college. And that was when I started full time, really, with the business. And shortly after this, Mum got quite ill. I think it was 3 or 4 weeks in total she was in hospital, needing surgery. So, before that, I was just packing parcels, but now I was on the computer doing emails, ordering stock, doing the rest of the business work. And when she got out of hospital, she was like, it's quite nice actually having him doing all that. I'll leave him to it. So I got some more responsibilities at that stage. Um, Changed things a little bit. Started using some more efficient systems, and that was how we were able to cope with the business continuing to get busier and busier, was we needed to be more efficient. And eventually the cabin was completely full. Um, Again, like it was in the garage, we were just out of space completely. So we rented a little office space, which was very nice. I felt very cool in there. My own office, much cooler than being in the back garden anyway. And as you can see in the picture, that's only about half of it. It was quite a lot bigger. We had big racks in there, filled up the space quite nicely, and that was quite good. I ended up employing my girlfriend and her younger sister to help with packing parcels and all the things we needed to do in there. And so it was a really nice little family operation with mum, myself, my girlfriend, and her sister. And it worked really well in there for a few years, but it just kept getting busier and busier and busier. So, Jared, could you go to the next slide? And this was when we really changed things. We got to a stage where we needed more help than myself, Becky, and Tash could provide. So we didn't know where to find it, and decided to outsource the warehousing, the fulfillment, the shipping, which unfortunately meant that Becky and Tash got made redundant, but they didn't mind. That was okay. And we were off to fulfillment, and it freed up myself and mum to do less of that physical labor packing parcels and more of the business side of things. At this point, we were just on the MandiMart UK website, and then Brexit happened. We had long-standing customers in the EU. With a lot to Romania. We'd always done a lot to Romania for some reason. I don't know if just word had spread among different groups and forums and communities there, but a lot of our business was to the EU, and now so many problems shipping. For about 3 months, just every parcel came back. The costs of shipping was so much higher. So I spent a lot of time looking at what we could do about this. How could we make things better? And eventually we opened up the EU warehouse in the Netherlands, launched the EU website in 2022. And that's been working really well. It's made it a much smoother process for everybody in the EU, avoiding some of the costs. It's still more expensive than it used to be, but we're doing everything we can to keep costs as low as possible there. And it was shortly after this that Lois came back, which was very nice. Massive help she's been over the last few years. And that's MandiMart, really. That's kind of the story of us over the years, our progression. And I'm sure if you've emailed with us, you'll know that it's one of Mandy, Joe, or Lois that's responding to you, because that's it. There's nobody else here. It's just us. And if you go to the next slide, Jared, I've got some pictures of Sam. So what happened with Sam in 2017, he was transitioning from child services to adult services, and after many years and lots of paperwork completed by mum, we managed to get him his own house with carers. So he's got his own place. You can see Matthew in the picture on the left there. He's absolutely brilliant, Sam. He's got a very good team, and they look after him very well. If you go to the next slide, Jared, we've got some more pictures of Sam. So yeah, he's got a good setup, really good team. They take him out into the community, does various different things, goes to the gym, swimming. You can see him on the kayak there. They'll take him shopping. He'll choose which meat he's having for the Sunday roast, and they make him a roast every Sunday. So yeah, it's really lovely, and this is just coming back to the point of it's parent to parent Spectrum supplies. We are a family that's been affected by autism. Sam is severely autistic. So we understand the situation that all of our customers are in. We understand what you're trying to achieve. You're trying to help your kids have a better life. So, and it's not we understand that. We live that. We still live that. So just that's why we do what we do. That's why you'll struggle to find any product that we sell cheaper with somebody else, because the whole thing that we do is we provide access to supplements cheaper than anybody else. That's the whole point of MandiMart. That's what we're here to do. And if we can't do that, then we'll send you to whoever is already providing it for a better price. If we can't compete with that, then that's it. We'll send you to them, because we're not here to make loads of money and profit. We're here to provide access to products. Like with Jared, with Spectrum Awakening, it was actually a customer that came to us and said, "Oh, we want to get these products. Could you help us get these products?" And that's how we discovered each other and started working together. So that's kind of it from me. Let's move on to the Q&A. And I know there's a lot of questions been coming in, so let's get some of those answered.
Thanks, Joe. Joe, are there any more slides, or should we just kind of keep here on
No,
this?
no, that's yeah, you can hang here.
So, I've got questions that people submitted ahead of time, so I want to read those. But, before I do, I mean, this is why I love these guys. We're all, Joe and Lois and Mandy and myself, we've just decided to dedicate our lives to help these kids, and so it's not Amazon and it's not iHerb. We're trying to do this for you guys. And Joe, I remember when we originally started working, and I wanted to make sure, like you said, let's get this stuff as affordably as possible. We sent you our wholesale prices and you seemed flabbergasted. You're like, that's amazing. So we all care, and that's why we're here to help you guys. So let's get to the Q&A. I will do as many as possible. We've only got about 5 minutes remaining. Claudia said, can genetic diseases be cured? The answer to that is no. You cannot change your DNA. However, you can treat DNA that's not functioning correctly. And so I do this in my practice, and what we do is let's create an example. Let's say the DNA for my thyroid isn't working. So my thyroid isn't working because the DNA for my thyroid is not functioning. I can give thyroid support. I can give thyroid hormones. I can give thyroid medication and replace the function that's not working. So that's how we use it with autism, obviously, but that's how we address genetic mutations. Maria, how do you help a child who might be prone to seizures? Well, first off, seizures can cause and continue developmental delays. We want to make sure there's no seizure activity. Obviously, there's pharmaceuticals out there, but some of the best natural things with huge amounts of research are vitamin B6 and folinic acid. So those are two well-researched things that you can do. Jura, what can help with echolalia? And I'm going to kind of wrap into this. How do we help kids' language? And from a biomedical standpoint, what I've seen help kids' language are three things. Number one, getting rid of gut infections. Okay. In fact, I just talked to a mom. She got a stool test, massive amounts of candida, 100 times normal level. And she started our yeast mold bundle, which I had a picture of. She said in 2 weeks, his behaviors have improved 50% and he started saying some words. So 2 weeks is insane to do that. Also, making sure the chemicals in the brain are functioning as they should. We didn't really get into that in today's medical portion, but I created this 4-part supplement protocol called the Skowron solution, which has 4 different supplements that help balance serotonin and dopamine and adrenaline and glutamate and GABA. And that helps with a lot of kids' language. And I would say the third thing is detox. So if you've got toxins or heavy metals in that brain that are preventing function of language, getting those out of the body can help a lot. Alex, and guys, if you have anything to throw in, Joe, please do. Alex says, I'd like to ask Dr. Skowron why the temper tamer herbs raise cortisol and not lower cortisol. Most of our kids, so cortisol is our stress hormone, and cortisol helps you handle stress. So kids who have a quick fuse and a quick trigger and you're walking on eggshells, they often have a low amount of cortisol, and that low cortisol is a low stress endurance. So raising cortisol with different herbs like our temper tamer supplement can help increase that emotional endurance. And I test cortisol levels in my patients, and they're often very low. If you have high cortisol, that's less common with autism, but it's still possible. We have a different supplement called Temper Tamer 2 that drops that cortisol. Okay. But it's usually that Temper Tamer one that helps. Um, Let me kind of go through a few others here. I like this one from Sarah. Sarah says, how do I help a kid with methylation when they don't tolerate methylated B vitamins? And this is a great question because B vitamins are extremely popular to help kids with on the spectrum. And in fact, I'm sure Mandy remembers when she was at the DAN conference 20 years ago, B12 shots, extremely popular back then. But a lot of kids get hyperactive on them, a lot of kids get aggressive on them, and a lot of kids have sleep issues with them. So, what do you do? If you're one of those kids, if you have a kid like that, and I would say it's about 50% of my patient load, number one, use unmethylated B vitamins. So, for instance, our superfolinic acid, as well as our new multivitamin that we're launching soon, we'll get that to you guys in a few weeks. That has the unmethylated B vitamins, has things like folinic acid and adenylyl cobalamin, adenylyl B12, and they're great because they don't stimulate those side effects. If you do get those side effects, I formulated something called anger management. Anger management I designed to help reduce those B vitamin hypersensitivity side effects. Now, to then answer Sarah's question, how do I methylate? There are other supplements that have methyl donors besides B vitamins. One of the more popular ones is DMG, dimethylglycine. So that's been a very popular supplement for a couple decades. It helps a lot of kids with the methylation without using the B vitamins that can cause those hyperreactions. Let me do this. Lois, I'm going to answer one more question here, and then maybe there's a question or two in the chat that we can answer live. Um, da, 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 da. I just want to pick a good one that'll help with everybody. There's some seizure questions. All right, let me answer Rajshree's question, and then Lois will get one live from the chat. Rajshree says, pollen allergy trigger for PANS. So I want to go back to the pandas and PANS conversation. Pandas and PANS is an autoimmune condition attacking the brain that's triggered by any kind of infection or inflammation. That can be strep, that can be a virus, that can be COVID, that can be Lyme. A lot of things can trigger this autoimmune reaction. So anytime there's more inflammation, there's going to be worse symptoms of pandas and PANS and autoimmune encephalitis. So even seasonal allergies and histamine can worsen those things. So what do? Number one, if you're exposed to seasonal allergies, you want to drop your histamine level. You can take antihistamines, things like Benadryl or geez, I'm forgetting the names, Claritin. Those are the brand names here in the US. You can take those things, but your child may get worse behavior on them. If you've ever given a child Benadryl to go to sleep and they're up all night, it's because they have such histamine problems. The Benadryl doesn't affect the histamine in the brain, it affects the histamine in your eyes and your nose and your skin. So that's kind of a sign you have histamine problems. You're going to want to take histamine metabolizing supplements, things like bioflavonoids, things like vitamin C. We've got a product called Histamine C. That's at MandiMart. Great ways to do that. But again, if you think your child has pandas or PANS, the long-term way to help with that is constant antimicrobials. You may even want to get tonsils and adenoids taken out of your child. I've seen that put pandas into remission. And anti-inflammatories. Now, you can't use NSAIDs all the time. You'll get an ulcer. Can't use ibuprofen. You don't want to use paracetamol because that's brain toxic, so throw that out. But you can use things like curcumin. You can use things like PEA. We've got a tasteless powder called Panda Bear. So that's kind of the combination of anti-inflammatories and antimicrobials for pandas and PANS. All right, Lois. I need a water break. Will you read a question?
Hi. So one question I've seen pop up a lot And Sheena has asked here actually is what about the taste and the reluctance of the child not wanting to take the supplements? What can we do about that? How can we help our kids get these supplements in them?
That's a great question to wrap up on. And I want to make sure we kind of keep our webinar to an hour. Um, people ask me, does this stuff really work? I say, yeah, if you can get it in them. So when I formulate supplements, I try to make them as tasteless as possible. I don't want to add flavors. I don't want to add things that add a taste because our kids are so picky, right? And I know this. So we try to formulate them to be tasteless. Sometimes that's impossible because the ingredients taste what the ingredients taste. So I get great ideas from my parents, my families. Some will get a little syringe at a drugstore or corner store, put all the supplements and a little juice into the syringe and shoot it into their child's mouth and then give them a reward. Okay. And eventually the child gets trained. Hey, you know what? If I just do this and get it over with, then I get my reward. Okay. It takes some training, but that's something. You can mix stuff into any kind of food, any kind of drink that you want. I know that does become a concern with our picky eaters. Some of our kids may only eat 3 or 5 foods. And if you put something in a food and they don't like it, they may give that food up and you have less foods to give. I know that's a struggle. I've also had families tell me, get an ice cube tray, put some gelatin or Jello in there and mix your supplements in there. So they get little, treats with their vitamins, or you can put juice in there and make juice popsicles with your supplements. So I say this, get creative. But any way you can get it in, get it in. If you want to bake it into muffins or pancakes or cookies or whatever you're doing, any kind of tricks, any kind of concealment, do what you can. So those are some great questions. So thank you, Lois. And I love that everybody's kind of tuned in live here. Joe, any last comments we want to wrap up with?
Well, we've got all the questions that have come in from the chat. We'll look through those and we'll send a bunch of them over to you, Jared. And when you've got a minute, if you'd like to give some answers wherever you can, we'd really appreciate that. And we can give that back out. We've got everybody's email address, etc. So if we can get as many questions answered as we possibly can, as long as you've got time to spare, we'll receive those answers and then dish them out to everybody that submitted them.
That sounds awesome. And again, I want to thank everybody who's on here live. Thank you for listening. We're recording this, so we're going to post it on YouTube. We'll post it on our website so you can rewatch it. And please share it. There's so many families around the world that are struggling and they're frustrated and they felt like you feel or like you felt in the past that you were alone on an island and there was no hope. But there is. There's so much that we're all discovering from this medical aspect that we want to help. And great people like Joe and Lois and Mandy that are connecting all of us together. So, what we need you guys to do is to spread the word because there's so many kids out there that need all of our help. And you may show this to somebody and totally change their lives because you were able to give them something. And Joe, I want to make sure that we wrap up with your websites. People, know they can get my info at spectrumawakening.com.
Yeah, of course. So for specifically, if you're in the EU, you need to use MandiMart.eu. If you place your orders there, that will ship from our Netherlands warehouse. You won't have to worry about customs. After you've made the payment to us on the website, there'll be no extra charges from anybody else. No custom signs to form. You don't have to sign forms. You don't have to do declarations. None of that. No hassle. And then if you're in the UK or in any other country, you should use our .co.uk website. If you're not in the UK, you will have to do customs. There's not a lot we can do about that. It is what it is. But for anybody in the rest of the world, you should get a better price overall on our UK website. Shipping tends to be more from within the EU, and we have slightly higher costs there that we have to build into our prices. So if you're in the EU, use our EU website, mandimart.eu. If you're anywhere else in the world, use mandimart.co.uk. That's where you get the best price.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. And thanks everybody for tuning in, whether it was live or later. And of course, thank you for doing everything you can to help your kids. And we'll hopefully see you soon. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Lois. Thanks, Mandy. See you
Bye,
guys.
guys.
All right. Cheers.